Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's video for Monday, March 10th, 2025. We're going to go over weather that is happening today and also this week, because as I mentioned yesterday, if you saw yesterday's tropical weather update video, I mentioned that this upcoming week there is the potential for what could be a pretty significant severe weather setup across portions of the south central and southeast U.S. as we head later into the week going into the weekend. So we have that to talk about, plus other things. So let's get started with today's video, starting off with the National Weather Service homepage, just to get an idea of what's going on right now, or at least what's going on today. Not too much, but that's going to change as we head throughout the course of this week. But as of right now, we do have red flag warnings in effect throughout the entire northern plains and northern Midwest. Very dry conditions and very strong gusty winds today is making the chance for fire weather pretty high across the northern plains. In fact, not only do we have red flag warnings, but even across the far northern plains, especially North Dakota, there are high wind warnings in effect right now, and this will continue throughout the rest of the day today. And then out towards the west, winter storm warnings in effect for portions of the Sierra mountains in Western California, Northwest Cali. We're going to have a storm system that'll move onshore across the Pacific Northwest later this week, and then whatever energy we have from that will move eastward and will develop into a very, very powerful low pressure across the northern Great Plains and the Midwest, and that'll help set up for what'll be a pretty significant severe weather outbreak, or at least the potential will be there for a pretty ripe severe weather setup across the south and central eastern United States as we head towards the end of the week. But what's going on right now, at least in terms of the satellite, not much. We have some snow showers across the northern half of the United States and in the southeast today. Low pressure spinning over the southeast, including Georgia, and moving into South Carolina right now. And this is bringing some dreary weather to the Carolinas and Georgia today. Let's take a look at the radar view of this. You can see rain stretching all the way from Georgia into the Carolinas, and this is beginning to lift up into North Carolina right now. And then on the southern end of it, with the cold front that extends south into the peninsula of Florida, there are some small thunderstorm cells that are moving across the peninsula of Florida today. And earlier, one actually prompted a tornado warning in Orlando, and it actually hit a TV station while it was on air live in Orlando earlier today. It's been circulating all across Twitter. Quite an interesting situation that happened, and that was prompted by one of these thunderstorms that moved across the peninsula of Florida, and that'll continue to happen throughout the rest of the day today. I think there is somewhat of a risk for severe weather across Florida, but beyond that, not much else happening across the rest of the United States. Clear in the Northeast, clear in the central, and even clear in the western half of the United States right now. In fact, today here in New York City, where I am, it's a very clear, and it's also a very warm day today. 63 degrees right now, actually. So definitely feels like spring. And the weather pattern will certainly turn to spring as we get towards later this week. Once again, we're talking about potentially severe weather for the southern central half of the United States, which we'll get to in a moment. But really quickly, to review, we do actually have a marginal risk for severe weather today across the peninsula of Florida, from central to southern Florida. Once again, associated with this front, that'll probably bring some more of these isolated thunderstorms throughout the rest of the day for areas in the southern peninsula. But other than that, not much else to worry about. A little bit of a risk when it comes to tornado and wind, but pretty much no hail chance that the Storm Prediction Center is foreseeing. But that's for today. And then obviously for the rest of the United States, really quickly going back, the rest of the United States is nice and quiet. Tomorrow, not much in the way of severe weather, as well as we head into Wednesday, some severe weather maybe across the Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana area. I think you call that the Arlatex, the Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana area. Maybe a marginal risk on Wednesday. Then not much happening on Thursday, but as we get to day 5 and day 6, these are the 2 days, and this is Friday and Saturday this week. These are the 2 main days we are watching potentially for severe weather, all the way from near the Gulf Coast up into the northern central Midwest, all the way up into Iowa, and maybe even into portions of far southwestern Wisconsin. That's at least the highlighted risk area for right now. And this is at least a 15% chance for severe weather, which, if we were to translate that to the day 1 to 3 outlook, I think that actually translates to a slight risk for severe weather. So imagine this as the slight risk hatched area, quite widespread. And then we even have as much as a 30% chance, which, if it's within the day 4 to 8 time frame that we have a 30% chance for severe weather, you know that the setup is pretty significant. And that is for day 5, which is Friday, and then into day 6 across the Gulf Coast and Southeast, and that is into Saturday, and then into Sunday and Monday, and then clears out. Actually, the system, whatever system that will bring severe weather, will remain, but I guess they don't see as high of a severe weather risk on Sunday. But especially Friday and Saturday, as we head towards the end of the week, severe weather is looking pretty likely. And part of why this is happening is, and I mentioned this yesterday, the Gulf of Mexico, or I should say the Gulf of America, is very warm. Kind of have to go back and forth between the two names. I like to call it the Gulf of Mexico because that's what I called it for years. But obviously you have to call it the Gulf of America now because that's what it's been recently changed to. So we're just going to call it the Gulf. And I've been talking about this the entire winter. Look at how warm the Gulf is. That means lots of extra moisture that could be transported northward, and it'll really help set up the breeding ground for severe weather, especially across the South and generally the entire eastern half of the United States. It's generally a lot of moisture that'll be transported northward, and it's going to be a huge factor into the dynamic setup that we'll have moving into later this week. So let's see it play out on the models with the GFS, with the 12Z run, which is fully loaded now. Starting off today, Monday, low pressure obviously off the southeast U.S., bringing rain across Florida, thunderstorms across Florida and rain across Georgia and the Carolinas today. That will move off, though, as we head into the day tomorrow. Does kind of deepen a little bit into a decent low pressure off the southeast before it moves out to sea. And then also another low pressure moves into Southern California. So if you need any rain in SoCal, especially, a lot of people need rain across Southern California, especially given what happened earlier this year. I guess you guys will really welcome that rain. That's associated with the low pressure that'll move in Wednesday, and then that system moves to the east, and then we have a huge system that will move into the Pacific Northwest, and this will bring rain all up along the west coast as it moves in. And as you can see by these dark blues in northwestern California, that is snow for the Sierra Mountains in northwestern California, and that is definitely a good thing, obviously, because as this melts, it turns into water that then gets transported all throughout California, so they need that for sure. And then we have a low pressure that develops over the northwestern half of the United States associated with this system, and we get a lot of precipitation in general across the western half of the United States as we head into Thursday. And then eventually that develops into a very, very strong low pressure as we head into Friday across the Great Plains. I mean, look at this: 975, 974 millibars across the Great Plains. If this was out in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Atlantic, that's equivalent to a hurricane, maybe a Cat 1, maybe a Cat 2. But this is not over the open Atlantic. This is quite literally right over the northern Midwest. So this is definitely a very powerful system. And then obviously you have a very strong southerly flow coming out of the Gulf into the southeast, and that'll pump lots of moisture. Obviously, with the very warm Gulf that we have, it's going to pump lots of moisture into the southeast. And then Friday into Saturday, it doesn't show up well for some reason on the GFS, but you could see a setup with this very strong low pressure, with this kind of tail that extends all the way south into the Gulf Coast. This is where we're going to be watching for severe weather as we head into Friday and Saturday. And then as this low pressure lifts out, it gets as low as 973 millibars. And take a look, number one, at how expansive this low pressure is too. So there will definitely be lots of energy associated with this system. That'll definitely help with severe weather across the south, or pump lots of energy for severe weather across the south. But also, you see a lot of these heavy snow or a lot of these blues here, where we have a lot of these tight isobars. Could probably imagine we'll have a pretty significant severe weather. Well, yes, we will have significant severe weather across the south, but maybe a blizzard, or maybe blizzard conditions across, what is this, the eastern half of the Dakotas, and maybe into portions of southwestern Minnesota. As we head into the weekend, and then this low pressure lifts northward into southern Canada. And then we kind of have another wave associated with this system across the south. Look at all this rain all the way through the deep south, from Mississippi all the way into Georgia and even Tennessee. And then another small low pressure develops with that too. And then that lifts northward as we go throughout the day on Sunday, brings rain to pretty much the entire eastern half of the United States, and then eventually up on into New England and the Northeast, as we head through Saturday or Sunday, and then it clears out. Although look at all this heavy rain as well for the Carolinas too, that occurs probably late Sunday into Monday, and then it all clears out as we head into Monday and into the early part of next week. So quite the setup that's going to occur as we head to the end of the weekend. Although the GFS doesn't really show it that well, so you know what? Let's switch to the European, at least with the 12Z, at least with the 6Z. You know, we're going to use enough of this. I guess the European kind of loads enough of the 6Z, so you can see what happens. So let's probably roll it out to here right around Wednesday, when we have our system crash into the Pacific Northwest, brings a lot of precipitation to the West Coast, and potentially very heavy snow to the Sierra Mountains, which is why we also have, really quickly before we go back to the model, that's why we have a lot of these winter storm watches in effect for the mountains, as posted by the National Weather Service. So that's why we have all those winter storm watches in effect. It's because of all this very heavy, high elevation snow in the Sierra Mountains in California, and then this low pressure moves eastward and eventually develops into a very strong system. Even the Euro is taking it into the 970s as we head into Friday and then into Saturday. And then you could see, this is early Saturday morning, or overnight Friday into Saturday. Look at the setup that begins to develop over Arkansas and Missouri. And then that moves eastward, and then that develops into a very bona fide line stretching all the way from the southern Gulf, from the southern U.S. states, all the way from the deep south, all the way on up into the northern Midwest. And then the Euro as well, like the GFS, bombs this out into a very powerful mid-970 system, as this then moves on up northward into southern Canada. But notice, very widespread area all the way from the southern deep south up into the Midwest. And then you kind of get the second wave that develops behind that going into Sunday. Looks like very widespread severe weather for a large chunk of the United States. And I would assume, given how much of those reds and those yellows that we saw, especially really quickly as we kind of get towards the end here and heading into Sunday, you would assume as well that we'll not only have lots of severe weather, but we'll probably also have too lots of flash flooding and heavy rain, which will probably lead to a whole bunch of flooding problems, especially with rivers too. And that'll also be something that we'll have to consider. And it's always very important to not only consider whenever we have severe weather, but also whenever we have big flooding threats. Because as I always say, when it comes to tracking hurricanes, we all know that the number one killer, and I always like to repeat it because it is something that people often forget, very much to the detriment of a lot of people sometimes. And we've seen this time and time again, especially recently within the last few years. But just remember always, the number one biggest threat in a hurricane, in a big tropical system, is the flooding rain and the storm surge. So the water, it's not just the wind, or in this case, it won't be just the tornadoes or the heavy wind, heavy rain, or the hail that we'll get. But judging by how much precipitation that the GFS shows with this system too, by judging by all those yellows and reds, you'll probably get some flash flooding and some heavy rain as well, and that'll probably cause another set of problems too, to watch out for. So a lot to watch out this upcoming week. We'll definitely continue to post these videos as we head throughout the week, so probably expect a video tomorrow. And then as we get into Friday, I'll probably try to, because I'm not going to really have that much time throughout the day, throughout the rest of this week, because I have school, obviously, and other things as well. But I'll try to squeeze in a video. I'll try to squeeze in throughout the rest of the week, and I'll certainly keep you updated. This is definitely a pretty significant event that looks like it's upcoming later this week. So if you're interested in these videos and you want to stay up to date, I would really, really recommend that you like, comment, and especially subscribe and turn on that notification bell too to get my videos the second I upload them. Thanks for watching for today. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and we will talk again very soon.